The social cognitive perspective. This is definitely a contemporary view on personality. And the reason that psychologists utilize it today is because it appreciates both nature and nurture in the influence of our thoughts and behaviors. So, to just briefly highlight the most important component of this perspective, it's all about reciprocal determinism. And that's what you're seeing on this slide here. So, reciprocal determinism, the idea that there is a bidirectional relationship between personality and environment. So, the biological perspective just really focuses on biology, and behaviorism, for example, just focuses on the environment. Reciprocal determinism argues that both biology and environment influence each other. It goes both ways. And in this video, I want to briefly describe an experience that I had in research. And this was based on a study that I conducted during graduate school looking at aggressive behavior among children. In this study, we presented children with a hypothetical scenario. And the scenario was that we told children to imagine you are walking at recess, you're walking by yourself, and all of a sudden you get hit in the back of the head with a ball. And so it's important that you get hit in the back of the head because we wanted the situation to be ambiguous. In other words, children were not sure whether or not somebody was hitting them on purpose. In other words, was this a hostile act or was it an accident? The idea is that this is an environmental stimulus, but the idea that it could be an accident or it could be on purpose depended on what children brought to the situation. In other words, the way that children interpreted this situation depended on their previous experiences. So they come to the table with a set of experiences and memories that guide their interpretation. So specifically what we found was that all the children in this study had a range of prior experiences with aggressive behavior. Some children had very little experience. They were not aggressive and they had very little experience as a victim of aggressive behavior. On the other hand, some children had much more experience, either as victim or perpetrator. And that difference is what ultimately influenced the way that these children interpreted getting hit in the back of the head with the ball. Those children with very little experience with aggressive behavior were much more likely to interpret the situation as an accident. On the other hand, children who had more experience with aggressive behavior in the past were much more likely to interpret that situation as hostile. So, what am I getting at? Ultimately, behaviorism argues that a stimulus leads to a response. But what we know is it's not that simple. In between the stimulus and response steps, there's something else going on, and that is where the social cognitive perspective has something unique to add. The social cognitive perspective argues that we all interpret information differently. We all come to the situation with a set of experiences or a schema that allows us to interpret the same situation differently. And so I might interpret the same situation differently than you might interpret a situation because of our experiences, our different memories, our different upbringing, our different cultural background, for example. And so as a result, it's not just a reaction to the environment. social cognitive perspective argues that we actively interpret situations based on our past experiences. So there's a dynamic relationship between nature and nurture.